As COVID-19 numbers increase, Canadians are preparing for a potential second lockdown as we knock on wood and hope that it doesn't have to go back to that. But you know, the numbers are really really increasing. What happens, though, when your teen decides they need a change and want to switch living accommodations and move in with your ex? Well, that's something that Shulman Partners is seeing right now. With the first lockdown, many households experienced increased tension and conflict, especially homes with teens. COVID has made it a traditionally difficult period, raising teens even more challenging. And this is especially true with teens who are used to having a very active social life. So what do you do if your teen comes to you and says, or screams at you and says, I want to go live with mom, or I want to go live with dad? It's got to be a really difficult situation. Laura Paris is here, associate lawyer at Shulman Partners LLP. Welcome back to the show, Laura. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Hi, Barb. Thanks for having me back.
This must have been quite a time, not just for teens, but for family issues in general.
Absolutely. I mean, the pandemic has definitely caused a lot of tensions in homes that we're seeing an increase in inquiries for, various different reasons that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, like I'm thinking even, look, there have to be a lot of people whose relationships were rocky before this happened. And then all of a sudden now you're locked down with someone and things weren't great before and now they're probably worse. Were you guys getting a lot of calls during lockdown? Was it more so once lockdown started to lift?
I would say that the increase started to happen after the lockdown lifted, and I would say the reason for that is primarily due to people didn't know what was happening. They were in kind of an uncertain state, and when things started to lift a little bit, they started to feel comfortable with moving forward with with things such as a separation.
So tell me about the whole teen and parent issue and why you guys are sort of raising this as something that is a trend right now.
Well, when you're looking at custody and access issues, they're determined based on the best interest of the child. And when assessing the best interest of the child, part of that is considering views and preferences of the kids. Now, when you're looking at children's views and preferences, I mean, as children get older, their views and preferences carry more weight. So when we're talking about teens that are making a decision where they decide that they want to choose one parent's home over the other, usually those types of situations aren't ones that require litigation. And if we do have parents that are calling in making those types of inquiries, we're kind of directing them to find a way to make it work because the child's voice is going to be given credence. Now, where we're seeing the increase or this new trend is in the reasons why parents are resisting children moving from one household to the other. And what we're seeing is that kids are essentially engaging in what we're calling parent shopping. So they're finding the household that has the more, lenient COVID protocols, maybe the household where, they can engage in online learning and they're not being fully monitored with respect to whether they're attending classes or whether they're completing their assignments. And they're favoring that home over, the home that they've been living in. So with these types of issues, this creates more of something that we can put before a court to make an argument to go against the child's views and preferences if we believe that their decision is not, in fact, in their best interest.
It's got to be tough, though, if you have a child who wants to go to the other home and you find ways to make so that it doesn't happen. And I don't mean you specifically, I just mean generally. And then the kid has to stay where he or she is. Does that make that scenario even worse?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's where I say as children get older, that's where we start giving more credence to their views and preferences because they begin to feel much more strongly about these situations and are at a point where they're more comfortable to kind of talking back and expressing those views. So absolutely, if there's a parent that's resisting a child's wishes, that's going to create tension in the home, for sure.
Is there a specific age when you say teenager where the courts are more likely to take the child's preference difference into consideration?
I mean, it's difficult to say. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say probably 15, 16 up. But it is really difficult to say. It's going to depend on each individual child. You can find a 12-year-old that has the same level of maturity as a 16-year-old. So it is really difficult to say, and you really do have to base it on that individual child. And again, when making those assessments, you're looking at the reasons why they're choosing to make these changes. If the reason is based on, well, one parent's going to be more lenient than the other, that's not necessarily a reasoned decision that is going to, represent the child's best interest.
How does a decision like this affect support payments if the primary care goes from one parent to another?
Well, when the primary care shifts, the support payments will shift. So if you have, one parent who has had primary care of the child for the last 10 years, and now it's a situation where they're switching their primary residence, that parent who has been used to receiving support for the last 10 years and has based their lifestyle on that support, not only are they no longer receiving that support, but they're paying out support. So the practical implications of it is that the now non-custodial parent is going to have to, pull back on their lifestyle because their cash flow isn't the same.
That's got to be really difficult in terms of, money becomes such an issue when it comes to cases like this for people who are paying it. And then I can't imagine someone who's been receiving it and all of a sudden being told, well, now you have to pay. May not be the same amount going the other way, though, right? It depends on what the person's income is.
Exactly. But I mean, if you think of someone who may have been in receipt of support and they were the higher income earner, now, not only are they not receiving that maybe $1,000 a month, but they're paying out $2,000 a month. So the net result is that they're down to $3,000 a month, and that's a big difference, right? So when we're seeing with these calls that a lot of people are motivated by the financial aspect of it and are resisting it due to the change in child support, because they're sitting there saying, I've been living my life this way. I have a mortgage. I have my expenses. I have my budget. I'm not going to be able to do this without that money, and even more so if I have to pay out.
And what about school? Obviously, that's a little bit of a different issue right now with a lot of students going virtual for the time being. But where the child attends school and where that is in proximity to the house they're supposed to be living in, does that factor in?
Absolutely. I mean, if there is going to be, depending on where each respective parent lives, if you are making a change in residency, a school change usually does follow. I mean, a lot of schools have, catchment areas that they want to see that the child is living within the certain jurisdiction, before they allow the enrollment. So the expectation is, I mean, I'm not 100% sure if they're making exceptions with respect to the online learning, but the expectation is that if you're moving to a new household in a new jurisdiction, that the school change is going to follow as well.
I can't imagine how difficult this would be in many situations. Does it ever get resolved just with the family themselves amicably?
We encourage these types of situations to be resolved amongst the parties. Again, when we're dealing with children of a certain age, their views and preferences are given a lot of weight. And if the types of reasons why, or the reasons that we're seeing why parents are resisting this, such as, due to a more lax COVID protocols or more lax approach to schooling, those types of issues are actually hard to prove. How do you provide evidence to the court to show that someone isn't practicing proper COVID protocols in their household? So when we're in situations like that, where we see that it's going to be difficult to